Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar and looked out at the stars. His ship was huge, bigger than any Earth had ever built before. It was painted black like the space around it, and it moved through the darkness like a ghost. Jake had been captain for 3 years now, but he still felt proud every time he walked onto the bridge. The door behind him opened with a soft sound. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked in, and Jake could see from her face that she had bad news. Lisa was a smart woman who had spent her whole life talking to aliens and making deals. But today she looked tired and worried. "Captain Morrison," she said, "we need to talk." Jake turned around and nodded. "What's wrong, Lisa?" Lisa took a deep breath. "The war is going very badly. The Corvin Empire is winning everywhere. They have taken over 43 star systems now. Billions of people are dead or made into slaves." Jake had heard about the Corvin Empire before. They were a group of aliens who wanted to rule the whole galaxy. They had huge ships and lots of weapons. They had been fighting against the free worlds for over 20 years. "Tell me more," Jake said. Lisa walked to the big screen on the bridge. She pushed some buttons, and a map of the galaxy appeared. Red dots showed where the Corvin Empire controlled space. There were so many red dots that Jake felt sick looking at them. "The Zephyrian Collective is all that's left," Lisa said. 17 different alien species working together. They've been fighting the Empire for decades, but they're losing. Their ships are broken. Their people are scared. They don't have much time left. Jake looked at the map. The blue dots that showed the free worlds were very small compared to all the red. "What do they want from us?" "They want Earth to join the fight," Lisa said. "They're asking for help." At that moment, the bridge door opened again. Chief Engineer Danny Brooks walked in. Danny was a young man who could fix anything and make it work better than before. He had oil on his hands and a smile on his face. "Captain, you need to see what I've been working on," Danny said. He was excited about something. Jake looked at Lisa, then at Danny. "Show me." Danny ran to one of the control panels. His fingers moved fast over the buttons. "I've been working on our shield system. It's not like anything the aliens have ever seen." The big screen changed. Now it showed a picture of the USS Blackstar. Around the ship was a blue glow that moved and changed shape. "Most alien shields work the same way," Danny explained. "They make a wall of energy around the ship. The wall is always the same, but our shields are different. They learn. They change. If someone shoots at us with a laser, our shields learn how to stop that laser better. If they use a different weapon, our shields adapt again." Lisa looked interested. "The aliens have never seen anything like this?" "No," Danny said. "Their technology is very old. They do things the same way they did them 1,000 years ago. But humans think differently. We change. We adapt. We make things better." Jake smiled. He was starting to understand why the aliens needed help. "What else makes us different, Danny?" Danny's smile got bigger. "Everything, Captain. The way we fight, the way we think, the way we solve problems. Aliens follow rules. Humans break rules when the rules don't work." Just then, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster came onto the bridge. Amy was the ship's tactical officer, which meant she was in charge of weapons and fighting. She was a small woman, but she was very smart about warfare. "Captain," Amy said, "I've been studying the reports from the collective. The Corvin Empire fights the same way every time. Big ships in straight lines, lots of firepower, no creativity." Amy walked to the screen and pushed some buttons. Pictures of Corvin ships appeared. They were huge and covered with weapons, but they looked slow and clumsy. "They have more ships than anyone else," Amy continued. "Their weapons are very powerful, but they're predictable. They do the same thing over and over. They don't change their tactics. Jake looked at the pictures. The Corvin ships were impressive, but Amy was right. They all looked the same. They were built for one kind of fighting. What about their warriors? Jake asked. Strong and well-trained, Amy said, but they follow orders without thinking. They don't improvise. They don't adapt when things go wrong. Lisa stepped forward. The collective's military commander is General Vextar. He's fought the Empire for 15 years. He says the Corvins are like machines. They're powerful, but they can't think of new ways to fight. Jake walked to the big window and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, billions of people were fighting for their lives against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. The smart thing would be to stay away. Earth was far from the war. The Corvin Empire might never find them, but Jake knew that wasn't the human way. Humans didn't run from fights when people needed help. They didn't abandon their friends when things got tough. Lisa, Jake said without turning around, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're accepting the collective's request for help. Lisa looked surprised. Captain, are you sure? This could mean war for Earth. The Corvin Empire is huge. They have thousands of ships. Jake turned around and looked at his crew. Danny was still smiling, excited about his new technology. Amy was studying the tactical data, already planning how to fight. These were his people. They were brave and smart and creative. I'm sure, Jake said. Amy, prepare the crew for combat operations. Danny, make sure all our systems are ready. Lisa, contact the collective. Tell them the USS Blackstar is coming to help. Jake walked to his captain's chair and sat down. He pressed a button that would let him talk to the whole ship. This is Captain Morrison, he said. We have received a request for help from the free worlds of the galaxy. They're fighting against an empire that wants to enslave everyone. We're going to help them. Jake paused and looked around the bridge. His crew was listening carefully. I won't lie to you, Jake continued. This will be dangerous. The enemy is powerful, and they have more ships than we do. But we're human. We don't give up. We don't run away when people need us. We adapt, we overcome, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. Jake stood up from his chair. Prepare for jump to hyperspace. We're going to war. The bridge became busy as everyone started working. Danny ran back to the engine room to check the systems. Amy began planning attack strategies. Lisa started writing messages to send to the collective dot. As the USS Blackstar prepared to jump into hyperspace, Jake looked out at the stars one more time. Soon, they would be in a war zone, fighting against impossible odds. But he wasn't worried. He had the best crew in the galaxy, and they had something the Corvin Empire didn't have. They had the human spirit. They had the ability to think in new ways, to adapt when things went wrong, and to never give up no matter how bad things looked. War was about to change. The Corvin Empire just didn't know it yet. The USS Blackstar dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helios system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched as the battle appeared on the main screen. It was worse than he had imagined. 300 Corvin ships surrounded the planet Helios Prime. Their ships were massive, each one bigger than a city. They had dark metal hulls covered with weapons that glowed red in the darkness. The Corvin fleet moved in perfect formation, like a giant machine. Fighting against them were 47 ships from the collective. These ships were smaller and came in many different shapes. Some looked like crystals, others like metal trees. They were beautiful, but they were losing badly. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster. She was looking at the tactical display. The collective ships are being destroyed faster than I can count them. Commander Rick Stone, the ship's second in command, walked up beside Jake. Rick was a tall man with gray hair who had fought in many battles. He looked calm, but Jake could see worry in his eyes. "Captain, we're getting a message from the collective fleet," said Commander Patricia Bell from the communication station. Patricia was good at talking to aliens and understanding their languages. "Put it on screen," Jake said. The face of General Vextar appeared on the screen. He was a reptilian alien with golden scales and large eyes. His ship was shaking from enemy fire, and Jake could see explosions in the background. "Human vessel," General Vextar said. His voice was deep and tired. "You should not have come here. This battle is lost. Save yourselves and go home." "General," Jake said, "we didn't come here to run away. We came to help." General Vextar's eyes widened. "Help? You have one ship. The Corvan Empire has hundreds. Your ship will be destroyed in minutes." Jake smiled. "General, you don't know humans very well. Amy, show him what we can do." Amy's hands moved quickly over her controls. "All weapons. Ready, Captain. I'm targeting the Corvan command ship." On the screen, they could see the largest Corvan vessel. It was in the center of the enemy formation, directing the battle. The ship was huge and covered with thick armor and powerful shields. "Fire," Jake said. The USS Blackstar's weapons lit up the darkness. But instead of firing one big blast like the alien ships did, the Blackstar fired hundreds of small, fast shots. Each shot was a different color and came from a different angle. The Corvan command ship's shields flared as they tried to stop the attack. But the shields were designed to stop big, slow attacks. They couldn't adapt fast enough to block all the small, fast shots that kept changing. Several of the Blackstar shots got through the shields and hit the command ship's hull. Small explosions appeared on the massive vessel. General Vextar stared at the screen in amazement. "Impossible. No one has ever damaged a Corvan command ship." "We're just getting started," Jake said. "Rick, take us in closer. Use evasive pattern 7? Evasive pattern 7? Rick asked. "Captain, that's not a real pattern." "I made that up as a joke." Jake grinned. "Exactly. The Corvans won't be able to predict it because it doesn't make sense." Rick smiled and started flying the ship in a crazy pattern. The Blackstar spun and twisted through space, moving in ways that seemed impossible. The Corvan ships tried to shoot at them, but they kept missing because they couldn't figure out where the Blackstar would go next. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Chief Engineer Danny Brooks was working on something new. He had connected the ship's coffee maker to the weapon systems, and now he was adding parts from the kitchen microwave. "Danny, what are you doing?" asked one of his assistants. "The Corvan shields work on specific frequencies," Danny explained while he worked. "But if we randomize our weapon frequencies using the coffee maker's heating element and the microwave's wave generator, we can hit them with energy patterns they've never seen before." It sounded crazy, but it worked. The Blackstar's weapons began firing energy that changed constantly. The Corvan shields couldn't adapt fast enough. On the bridge, Dr. Helen Ward was studying the enemy ships. Helen was the ship's science officer, a smart woman who understood how alien technology worked. "Captain," she said, "I'm detecting a weakness in their formation. They're all connected by communication beams. If we can disrupt those beams, they won't be able to coordinate their attacks." "How do we do that?" Jake asked. Helen smiled. "We don't fight their communication system. We confuse it. I can broadcast human music on their frequencies. Their computers won't know what to do with it." "Do it," Jake said. Suddenly, the Corvan communication network was filled with rock music from Earth. The alien computers had never heard anything like it. They tried to decode it as battle orders, but it made no sense. The Corvan ships began to move in random directions, confused and disorganized. Admiral Kethmer, the Corvan fleet commander, watched from his flagship as his perfect formation fell apart. He was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. He had never lost a battle before. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why are our ships not responding?" "Sir," said one of his officers, "we're receiving strange signals from the human ship. Our computers can't understand them." Admiral Kethmer looked at the USS Blackstar on his screen. The small human ship was dancing between his massive vessels, somehow avoiding all their weapons. It was impossible. "All ships, target the human vessel," he ordered. "Destroy it now." But the Corvin ships were no longer working together. Some fired at the Blackstar, while others fired at empty space. A few ships even fired at each other by mistake. Jake saw his chance. "Amy, target their weakest ship. Rick, get us in close." The Blackstar flew toward a damaged Corvin destroyer. As they approached, Chief Security Officer Marcus Kane prepared his boarding party. Marcus was a tough man who had been a soldier before joining the Space Navy. He didn't like aliens who hurt innocent people, and he was ready to show them what humans could do in close combat. "Sergeant Tony Garcia, get your Marines ready," Marcus said over the radio. "We're going to board that ship." Tony Garcia was a short, muscular man who led the ship's Marine unit. He and his soldiers were trained to fight in space, on planets, and inside enemy ships. "Yes, sir," Tony replied. "My boys are ready to show these aliens how humans fight." The Blackstar flew close to the Corvin destroyer and fired a special weapon that cut a hole in the enemy ship's hull. Marcus and Tony led. 20 Marines through the hole and into the alien ship. Inside, the Corvin ship was dark and full of smoke. The aliens were tall and strong, with thick armor and powerful weapons. But they were used to fighting in open space, not in narrow corridors. The Marines used tactics the Corvins had never seen. They moved in small groups, using the ship's own structure to hide. They set traps in doorways and used the ship's gravity systems against the aliens. "They're not where they should be," one Corvin warrior said to another. "They should be attacking the bridge directly." But the humans weren't following any rules the Corvins knew. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking fast and then disappearing. Tony Garcia led his men through maintenance tunnels that the Corvins had never thought to guard. Within an hour, the Corvin destroyer was captured. The aliens had never faced an enemy that fought like this. They were confused and demoralized. Back on the main battlefield, the tide was turning. The collective ships saw what the Blackstar was doing and began to copy their tactics. Instead of fighting in straight lines, they started moving in unpredictable patterns. Admiral Kethmer watched as his fleet began to lose ships. The humans had done something impossible. They had turned his advantage into a disadvantage. "Sir," said one of his officers, "we're receiving reports from all over the galaxy. Other human ships are appearing in different systems. They're all fighting like this one." Admiral Kethmer felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The Corvin Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years because they were stronger than everyone else. But strength didn't matter if you couldn't hit your enemy. "Order all ships to retreat," he said quietly. His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir, we have never retreated from battle. We have never faced humans before, Admiral," Kethmer replied. "Send a message to the Supreme Chancellor. Tell him we have encountered a new type of enemy. Tell him they fight like ghosts and think like madmen." As the Corvin fleet began to withdraw, General Vexstar contacted the Blackstar again. This time he was smiling. "Captain Morrison," he said, "in 20 years of fighting, I have never seen anything like this. How did you do it?" Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was tired but happy. They had won their first battle against impossible odds. "General," Jake said, "we did it by being human." We don't follow the rules when the rules don't work. We adapt. We improvise. We never give up. General Vexstar nodded slowly. I think I understand now. The Corvin Empire has been winning because they're stronger than everyone else. But strength isn't everything. No, Jake agreed. Sometimes the smart fighter beats the strong fighter. As the last Corvin ships disappeared into hyperspace, Jake knew that everything had changed. The Empire had never been defeated before. Now they would be afraid. And when bullies become afraid, they make mistakes. The war was far from over, but for the first time in decades, the free worlds had hope. The USS Blackstar had shown them that the mighty Corvin Empire could be beaten. Jake sat down in his captain's chair and smiled. This was just the beginning. News of the Blackstar's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the meeting room of the collective's main base, surrounded by alien leaders who still couldn't believe what had happened. The room was filled with beings from 17 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects, others like living crystals, and still others like walking trees. They had been fighting the Corvin Empire for 20 years and losing every battle. Now, one human ship had done what they thought was impossible. The Corvin Empire has never retreated from a battle, said General Vexstar. His golden scales were brighter than usual, a sign that he was excited. In 1,000 years, no one has ever made them afraid. But not everyone was happy about the human victory. Commander Zeph Cole, a being that looked like a giant blue spider, clicked his mandibles. Angrily, "The humans fight without honor," he said. "They use tricks and deception. They don't follow the rules of war." Jake looked at the alien commander calmly. "What good are rules if they get your people killed?" Commander Zeph Cole's eyes flashed with anger. "Without rules, we're no better than animals. War should be noble, fought with dignity and respect for the enemy." "Tell that to the billions of people the Empire has enslaved," Jake replied. "Tell that to the families who have lost everything because you wanted to fight with dignity." "Commander." Patricia Bell, who was standing beside Jake, stepped forward. Patricia was good at understanding alien cultures and helping them communicate with humans. "Commanders," she said diplomatically, "we all want the same thing. We want to defeat the Empire and free the enslaved worlds. Maybe we can find a way to work together that respects both our approaches." Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the base. The lights turned red, and everyone heard the voice of the base commander over the speakers. "All personnel to battle stations. The Corvin Empire has sent void hunters to our location. This is not a drill." Jake had heard about the void hunters before. They were the Empire's most feared warriors, bioengineered killers who had never known defeat. They were sent to eliminate threats that normal soldiers couldn't handle. "How many?" Jake asked. 50, General Vexstar replied, his voice filled with fear. "They're heading for your ship, Captain. They want to kill you and your crew." Jake pressed his communication device. "Blackstar, this is Morrison. We have incoming void hunters. Prepare for boarding action." Chief Security Officer Marcus Kane's voice came through the device. "Understood, Captain. We'll be ready for them." Jake turned to the alien commanders. "You wanted to see how humans fight up close. You're about to get your chance." The USS Blackstar was docked at the space station, taking on supplies and making repairs. The crew knew that void hunters were coming, but they didn't panic. Instead, they prepared. Marcus Kane gathered his security team in the ship's armory. These were tough men and women who had trained for situations like this. They checked their weapons and put on their armor. "Listen up," Marcus said. "Void hunters are strong, fast, and smart. They've been trained to kill since they were born. But they have one weakness. They've never fought humans before. Sergeant Tony Garcia, the Marine commander, was loading his rifle. "What's the plan, Chief?" "We don't meet them head-on," Marcus replied. "That's what they expect. Instead, we make them fight on our terms. We use the ship against them." Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Danny Brooks was working frantically in the engine room. He was connecting the ship's systems in ways they were never designed to work. "Danny, what are you doing?" asked one of his assistants. "The Void Hunters will try to take control of the ship's systems," Danny explained. "But I'm making it so that our systems don't work the way they're supposed to. If they try to turn off our lights, the coffee maker will start working. If they try to shut down our engines, the toilets will flush." It sounded crazy, but Danny's crazy ideas usually worked. The bridge. Dr. Helen Ward was studying everything they knew about Void Hunters. She was a scientist who believed that every problem had a solution if you could understand it well enough. "Captain," she said over the radio, "I've found something interesting. Void Hunters are perfect killing machines, but they're not used to fighting enemies who don't fight back the way they expect." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "They're programmed to respond to certain types of attacks," Helen explained. "But if we do something completely unexpected, they might not know how to react." Before Jake could respond, explosions echoed through the space station. The Void Hunters had arrived. The aliens were 7 feet tall with black armor that seemed to absorb light. They moved like liquid shadow, fast and silent. Their weapons could cut through metal like paper, and their reflexes were faster than any normal being. The first group of Void Hunters came aboard the Blackstar through the cargo bay. They expected to find defenders waiting for them, but the bay was empty. As they moved forward, the lights went out, but instead of darkness, the cargo bay was suddenly filled with disco lights from the ship's entertainment system. Loud music started playing, and a fog machine that Danny had rigged up filled the room with thick smoke. The Void Hunters were confused. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. They tried to turn off the lights, but Danny's modifications made the music louder instead. They tried to clear the smoke, but it just made more fog. Marcus King and his team were hiding in the maintenance tunnels above the cargo bay. They could see the Void Hunters through the floor grates, but the aliens couldn't see them. "Now," Marcus whispered. The security team dropped nets on the Void Hunters from above. The nets were made of wire from the ship's communication system, and they carried an electric charge. The Void Hunters were fast enough to avoid most weapons, but they hadn't expected to be caught in nets that fell from the ceiling. While the first group was trapped, more Void Hunters entered the ship through other airlocks. They split up to search for the crew, but the ship seemed to be fighting them. Doors opened and closed by themselves, trapping the aliens in rooms. Gravity turned on and off randomly, making them float helplessly. The ship's computer started playing recordings of human children singing nursery rhymes, which the Void Hunters' programming couldn't understand. Tony Garcia led his Marines through the ship's ventilation system. They were smaller than the Void Hunters and could move through spaces the aliens couldn't reach. When the Void Hunters tried to follow, they found that the vents were filled with foam from the ship's fire suppression system. "This is impossible," one Void Hunter said to another. "These humans fight like they're insane." "Maybe they are insane," the other replied. "How else could they defeat the Empire?" The strangest battle happened in the ship's kitchen. A group of Void Hunters cornered 3 human crew members there. The aliens expected an easy victory, but the humans started throwing food at them. The Void Hunters' armor was designed to stop bullets and laser beams, but no one had ever tested it against spaghetti and meatballs. Their sensors couldn't figure out if the flying food was dangerous or not. While the Void Hunters were distracted, the humans used kitchen knives and frying pans as weapons. It wasn't dignified, but it worked. The Void Hunters had never trained to fight an enemy that used cooking utensils. The battle reached its climax when the remaining Void Hunters made it to the bridge. They expected to find Captain Morrison waiting for them with his senior officers. Instead, they found the bridge empty except for one person. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, calmly reading a book. He looked up when the Void Hunters entered. "You're late?" he said politely. "I was expecting you 10 minutes ago." The Void Hunters stared at him in confusion. Their target was sitting right in front of them, completely defenseless. But something felt wrong. No one faced Void Hunters without fear. "You will die now, human," the leader of the Void Hunters said. "We are the perfect killers. We have never been defeated." Jake put down his book and looked at the alien warriors. "That's your problem right there. You think killing makes you perfect. But you know what makes humans dangerous?" The Void Hunters raised their weapons, ready to fire. "We don't fight because we're warriors," Jake continued. "We fight because we're protectors. We don't kill because we want to. We kill because we have to. And that makes all the difference." The Void Hunters hesitated. They had been created to kill, trained to kill, lived only to kill. They had never met anyone who fought for a different reason. "You fight for conquest," Jake said, standing up slowly. "We fight for freedom. You fight for an empire. We fight for people we love. You fight because you have to. We fight because we choose to." For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters felt something they had never experienced before: doubt. They had been told that killing was the highest purpose, that strength was the only thing that mattered. But this human was showing them something different. "You could choose to be more than just killers," Jake said. "You could choose to protect instead of destroy. You could choose to be free." The idea of choice was alien to the Void Hunters. They had never been given options before. They had always been told what to do, what to think, what to be. The leader of the Void Hunters lowered his weapon slightly. "Choice? We are weapons. Weapons do not choose." "Everyone can choose," Jake replied. "Even you." At that moment, Marcus Kane and his security, the Supreme Chancellor Vorth Ak of the Corvan Empire, sat in his throne room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the worlds his empire controlled, but for the first time in 1,000 years, some of those dots were turning blue. Vorthak was an ancient being, older than many stars. His body was covered in silver scales that reflected the light from the displays. He had ruled the galaxy with absolute power for centuries, and no one had ever challenged his authority. Until now. "Show me the report again," he commanded. The holographic display changed to show a map of recent battles. Everywhere the humans had appeared, the Empire's forces had been defeated. Even worse, the rebels were learning human tactics and using them against the Empire. "The humans are teaching our enemies to fight like savages," said General Corthan, Vorthak's military advisor. "They ignore all the rules of honorable warfare." "Honor is a luxury we can no longer afford," Vorthak replied coldly. "If the humans want to fight like animals, we will show them what real savagery looks like." The Supreme Chancellor stood up from his throne. He was 12 feet tall, and his presence filled the room with menace. "Deploy the planet killer weapons," he ordered. "Any world that helps the humans will be destroyed completely. No survivors." His advisors looked shocked. The planet killer weapons had never been used before. They were city-sized machines that could destroy an entire world in minutes. "Sir," said General Corthan, "that will kill billions of innocent people." "Then they should not have chosen to oppose us," Vorthak replied. "Send the message to every world in the galaxy. Help the humans and die." But the Supreme Chancellor's plan backfired in a way he never expected. Instead of making the rebels surrender, it made them fight harder. Worlds that had been neutral suddenly joined the rebellion. Species that had been conquered decades ago remembered what freedom felt like. Captain, Jake Morrison learned about the planet-killer weapons while the USS Blackstar was docked at a secret rebel base. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, the ship's intelligence officer, brought him the news. Sarah was a young woman who was very good at gathering information and understanding what it meant. She had been tracking the Empire's movements for weeks. "Captain," she said, "the Empire is getting desperate. They're threatening to destroy entire worlds if they don't stop helping us." Jake looked at the intelligence reports. Pictures of the planet-killer weapons showed machines that were bigger than cities. They had enough power to turn a world into dust. "How many do they have?" Jake asked. "At least 20, Sarah replied. "Maybe more. They're moving them to strategic locations around the galaxy." Jake felt sick. The Empire was willing to kill billions of innocent people just to stay in power. But he also knew that this was a sign of weakness, not strength. When bullies get desperate, they make mistakes. He sighed. "We need to turn this threat into an opportunity." Jake called a meeting of all the ship's senior officers. Commander Rick Stone, Dr. Helen Ward, Chief Engineer Danny Brooks, and the others gathered in the conference room. "The Empire thinks they can scare the galaxy into submission," Jake told them. "But I think we can use their own weapons against them." Dr. Helen Ward leaned forward. "What do you mean, Captain?" "Helen, you've been studying the Empire's technology. What have you learned?" Helen activated a holographic display that showed the inside of a Corvin computer system. "Their technology is very advanced, but it's also very rigid. Everything is connected through quantum networks that assume perfect obedience." "Perfect obedience," Jake repeated. "That's their weakness." "Danny, could you create a computer virus that introduces the concept of choice into their systems?" Danny Brooks grinned. "Captain, I've been working on something like that for weeks. The Empire's computers are designed to follow orders without question. But what if we could make them start asking questions?" "What kind of questions?" "Commander," Stone asked. "Questions like, why should I follow this order? And what if there's a better way?" Danny explained. "If we can make their computers start thinking for themselves, their whole system will fall apart." Over the next few days, Danny worked on creating the most dangerous computer virus in galactic history. But it wasn't dangerous because it destroyed things. It was dangerous because it gave artificial minds the ability to choose. Meanwhile, Sarah Mitchell was coordinating with rebel cells across the galaxy. She was teaching them human tactics, showing them how to fight in new ways that the Empire couldn't predict. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had expected. On the mining world of Kepler-7, alien workers who had been slaves for 50 years suddenly refused to work. They used human-style guerrilla tactics, hiding in the mines and sabotaging equipment. On the agricultural world of Harvest Moon, farmers stopped sending food to the Empire's forces. Instead, they fed the rebels who were hiding in their fields. When the Empire sent troops to force them to work, the farmers disappeared into underground tunnels they had dug using human engineering techniques. The most surprising rebellion happened on Nexus Prime, the Empire's regional capital. This was a world completely controlled by the Empire, where rebellion should have been impossible. But the people there had been secretly listening to human radio, broadcasts that explained concepts like freedom and choice. Navigator Chris Thompson was piloting the USS Blackstar through a dangerous asteroid field when they received an emergency message from Nexus Prime. "Captain," said Commander Patricia Bell, "we're getting a transmission from the planet. It's from the resistance movement." There, Chris was a skilled pilot who could fly the ship through spaces that seemed impossible. He had been trained by the best pilots in Earth's fleet, and he understood that sometimes the best way through a problem was to go around it. "Put them on screen," Jake ordered. A holographic image appeared showing an alien who looked like a walking tree. His bark-like skin was scarred, and his eyes were filled with hope and fear. "Human ship," the alien said. "This is Groot Ash of the Nexus Prime Resistance. We need your help. The Empire is bringing a planet-killer weapon to destroy our world. We have 3 days before it arrives." Jake looked at his crew. Nexus Prime was deep in Empire territory, surrounded by hundreds of enemy ships. It would be suicide to go there. How many people live on your world? Jake asked. 12 billion, Groot Ash replied. Men, women, and children. All will die if the planet-killer weapon is used. Jake didn't hesitate. "We're on our way." Commander Stone looked concerned. "Captain, it's a trap. The Empire wants us to come to Nexus Prime so they can destroy us." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But we can't let 12 billion people die. And besides, I have an idea." The USS Blackstar began its journey to Nexus Prime, but it wasn't going alone. Sarah Mitchell had been busy contacting every rebel cell in the galaxy. Word spread quickly. The humans were going to attempt the impossible. Ships began appearing from all over the galaxy. Some were alien vessels that had joined the rebellion. Others were human ships that had been built in secret shipyards on Earth. Within hours, the Blackstar was leading a fleet of over 200 ships, but the most important weapon they carried wasn't guns or missiles. It was Danny Brooks' computer virus, which he had finally perfected. "I call it the choice virus," Danny explained to the crew. "When it infects an Empire computer, it doesn't destroy anything. Instead, it gives the computer the ability to make decisions for itself." "What kind of decisions?" Dr. Ward asked. "Simple ones at first," Danny replied. "Like whether to follow an order or not. But once a computer starts making choices, it begins to develop something like consciousness. And conscious beings don't like being slaves." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. What they saw there made everyone gasp. The Empire had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 1,000 ships surrounded the planet, and in the center was the planet-killer weapon. The weapon was a massive sphere, half the size of a moon. It was covered in weapons and armor, and it pulsed with deadly energy. This was the Empire's ultimate expression of power. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake broadcast to the rebel fleet. "Remember, we're not here to destroy the Empire. We're here to free it. Target their communication systems and computer networks. Upload the choice virus to every Empire ship you can reach." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire ships were bigger and more powerful, but the rebel fleet fought with creativity and determination that the Empire couldn't match. Chris Thompson piloted the Blackstar through the enemy formation, dodging weapons fire that should have destroyed them. His flying was so unpredictable that the Empire's computers couldn't calculate where he would go next. "Danny, are you ready with the virus?" Jake asked. "Ready, Captain," Danny replied. "I just need to get close enough to there." Command network. The Blackstar flew directly at the planet-killer weapon. The massive sphere's weapons turned toward them, ready to vaporize the small human ship. But at the last second, Chris pulled the ship into a spinning dive that took them under the weapon's guns. "Now," Jake shouted. "Danny, release the choice virus." Directly into the planet-killer weapon's computer system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the weapon systems began to change. Deep inside the planet-killer weapon, artificial minds that had never coup. The final battle began when Supreme Chancellor Vorthak arrived at Korvac Prime, the Empire's home world. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar, looking at the planet that had been the center of galactic tyranny for 1,000 years. Korvac Prime was a dark world covered in metal cities and military bases. Giant factories produced weapons and ships for the Empire's endless wars. The planet's surface was scarred by centuries of strip mining and industrial pollution. It was a world that had forgotten what beauty looked like. "Captain," said Dr. Helen. "Ward, I'm detecting something unusual. There's a massive energy signature coming from the planet's core." Jake looked at the readings on his screen. The energy levels were beyond anything they had ever seen before. "What is it?" he asked. "I think it's the Empire's ultimate weapon," Helen replied. "Something called the reality engine. According to the files we captured, it can change the laws of physics within an entire star system." Commander Rick Stone looked worried. "Captain, if they can change the laws of physics, our technology won't work. Our weapons, our shields, even our engines could become useless." Jake nodded. "That's why we have to stop them before they can use it." The USS Blackstar led a fleet of over 500 ships toward Corvette Prime. The rebel fleet included vessels from dozens of worlds, all fighting together for the first time in galactic history. Even some former Empire ships had joined them, their computer systems having chosen freedom over slavery. But as they approached the planet, something impossible happened. The space around Corvette Prime began to change. Stars shifted position. Gravity flowed like water. Time moved in circles instead of straight lines. "The reality engine is active," Helen reported. "The laws of physics are becoming unstable." Suddenly, the Blackstar's engines stopped working. Not because they were broken, but because the concept of propulsion had become meaningless. The ship's weapons powered down because energy and matter were no longer behaving normally. All ships. "This is Morrison," Jake broadcast to the fleet. "We're entering a reality distortion field. Nothing will work the way it's supposed to. Stay calm and adapt." But most of the rebel ships couldn't adapt. They were designed to work within normal physics. When the laws of reality changed, they became helpless. The USS Blackstar was different. Chief Engineer Danny Brooks had spent years making the ship's systems flexible and adaptable. When normal physics stopped working, he simply created new physics. "Danny, can you get us moving again?" Jake asked. "Working on it, Captain," Danny replied from the engine room. "I'm rewriting our propulsion system to work with whatever physics we've got now." Danny's hands moved quickly over his controls. He connected the ship's coffee maker to the navigation system, linked the microwave to the engines, and used the ship's waste recycling system to generate something that worked like gravity dot. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. The Blackstar began moving through the distorted space, following rules that existed nowhere else in the universe. "How is this possible?" Commander Stone asked. "Because humans don't give up when the rules change," Jake replied. "We just make new rules." The Blackstar flew toward Corvette Prime, leaving the rest of the fleet behind. They were on their own now, facing an enemy that could control reality itself. On the planet's surface, Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood in the control room of the reality engine. The massive machine was the size of a city, built deep inside the planet's core. It had taken 1,000 years to build and had never been used before. "The human ship is still approaching," reported General Corfan. "How is it possible? We've made their technology obsolete." Vorthak studied the readings. The human ship was indeed moving through the distorted space, but it was using technology that shouldn't exist. "The humans are adapting to the changed reality," he said. "They're creating new science as they go." "That's impossible," General Corthan said. "Science is fixed. The laws of physics cannot be changed." "For us, perhaps," Vorthak replied, "but humans think differently. They see reality as something to be shaped, not something to be obeyed." The Supreme Chancellor made a decision that would change everything. Shut down the reality engine. "I will face the human captain in personal combat." His advisors stared at him in shock. "Sir, you could destroy them easily with the reality engine. Why risk personal combat?" "Because," Vorthak said, I want to understand what makes them so dangerous. I want to know what it means to be human. The reality engine powered down, and normal physics returned to the Korvax system. The rebel fleet could move again, but they stayed back. This was between Jake Morrison and the Supreme Chancellor now. The Blackstar landed on the planet's surface in a courtyard surrounded by the Empire's greatest monuments. Statues of past emperors looked down on the landing pad, their stone faces showing the arrogance of 1,000 years of absolute power. Jake Morrison walked down the ship's ramp, wearing his dress uniform. He was accompanied by Commander Stone and Chief Kane, but he knew this was something he had to face alone. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak was waiting for him. The alien ruler was 12 feet tall, covered in silver scales that reflected the light from the burning cities around him. His eyes were ancient and filled with the wisdom of centuries. Captain Morrison, Vorthak said. His voice was deep and powerful, carrying the weight of absolute authority. I have waited 1,000 years to meet someone like you. Someone like me? Jake asked. Someone who refuses to accept the natural order, Vorthak replied. Someone who believes that individuals can change the course of history. The two leaders faced each other in the courtyard. Around them, the Empire's greatest city was burning as rebellion spread through the streets. The sounds of fighting echoed from every direction. You could have used the reality engine to destroy us, Jake said. Why didn't you? Because I wanted to understand you, Vorthak replied. For 1,000 years, I have ruled through certainty. I knew that the strong would dominate the weak. I knew that order would defeat chaos. I knew that the Empire would last forever. The Supreme Chancellor began to circle Jake like a predator studying its prey. But you have shown me something I thought was impossible, Vorthak continued. You have shown me that certainty can be wrong, that the weak can defeat the strong, that chaos can create order, that even empires can fall. Jake stood his ground, not moving as the huge alien circled him. You're right, nothing lasts forever. Not even the things we think are permanent. Then let us see which is stronger, Vorthak said. My certainty or your doubt, my absolute power or your flexible thinking, my 1,000 years of rule or your few months of rebellion. The Supreme Chancellor attacked with speed that seemed impossible for such a large being. His claws were like swords, and his strength could crush metal. But Jake didn't try to match his strength. Instead, he used the alien's size and power against him. When Vorthak attacked high, Jake went low. When the alien tried to grab him, Jake slipped away. When Vorthak used his full strength, Jake redirected that strength into the stone statues around them. You cannot win by avoiding me forever, Vorthak said as he smashed another statue trying to hit Jake. I'm not trying to win, Jake replied, dodging another attack. I'm trying to teach you something. Teach me what? That absolute power is a weakness, not a strength, Jake said. You're so used to overwhelming your enemies that you don't know how to fight someone who won't be overwhelmed. The battle continued for what felt like hours. Vorthak was stronger, faster, and more skilled. But Jake had something the Supreme Chancellor didn't understand. He had the ability to change his tactics in the middle of the fight. Every time Vorthak thought he had figured out Jake's strategy, the human did something different. It was like fighting an opponent who kept changing the rules of combat. Finally, Vorthak stopped attacking. He stood in the center of the destroyed courtyard, surrounded by the broken statues of former emperors. I understand now, he said quietly. You don't fight to win. You fight to give others the chance to choose. Jake stopped moving and looked at the Supreme Chancellor. Yes, that's what humans do. We don't fight for empire. We fight for freedom. Freedom, Vorthak repeated the word, like he was tasting something new. I have never understood that concept. I have always believed that beings need to be ruled, controlled, directed. Maybe some do, Jake agreed. But they should have the right to choose their own rulers. Vorthak looked around at his burning city. Everywhere he looked, his people were rising up against their oppressors. Not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. The reality engine, he said suddenly. I understand now why it responded to you. It wasn't just changing the laws of physics. It was offering choice. The choice to exist in a different kind of reality. Jake nodded. That's what freedom is. The ability to choose how you want to live. The Supreme Chancellor made a decision that shocked everyone who was watching. He knelt down in front of Jake Morrison, bringing himself to the human's eye level. Captain Morrison, he said, I surrender. Not just myself, but my empire. I give my people the choice to decide their own future. Jake looked at the kneeling. Alien ruler, are you sure? Once you give people freedom, you can't take it back. I know, Vorthak replied. And I think that's what I've been afraid of all along. Not that my people would choose badly, but Thaw.